place not too far in the future, I'd say 25 years or so, so not too far, which is why we kind of dub it more of a near-fi rather than sci-fi. And it takes place in a world where a lot of our climate accords have failed and global warming has continued, and the coastlines all over the globe, of course, have become flooded, including our specific area, which is Los Angeles, and the coastline is, of course, flooded, and giant seawalls have been erected to not only protect the interior, but keep thousands of now climate refugees on one side while they kind of wait through a lottery system to become admitted. And our story follows the characters Jax and Mai, who come from opposite sides of the tracks, if you will. Mai is the character who is from Breakwater, is of Breakwater. She grew up there. That's her environment. She knows. Jax comes from the other side. They meet and their worlds collide as he's there to find something of great value to him and his family, and then they kind of work together to help save not only themselves, but Breakwater as a whole.
Nice job. That was a good job.
You pitched that before.
First time, actually.
So, the specificity on that format, it's vertical.
That's correct,
right?
Yes.
And how many episodes?
10.
10, and how many minutes per episode?
It was like a 10 by 10, but most ended up being around 6 to 8. Maybe the first and last were maybe the full 10.
That was one of the things we found out about producing for Snap. The script was probably 120 pages, but by the time you edited it for Snap level of speed that they needed to consume the information, it would be down to 76 minutes. 120 pages down to 76 minutes.
Yeah.
And scenes weren't cut. It was just about the pacing.
Yeah.
That everything needed to be edited out.
We'll go in these details, quite interesting. Maybe a little trailer to understand this high immersion.
I just pitched it so well.
It's the one. They blind us.
In a few hours, this whole place is going to be destroyed. We need to get everyone to high ground before the surge hits. It might seem we can just break in. I'm on.
Jax, let's start taking to the wall.
I'll get your sister back. On condition, we'll leave Breakwater tonight. See you on the other side.
Who is in charge? What's happening? He's still outside my sister! I got you. Hold on. No way we're getting through now. Maybe you should try and save the world after the storm.
Wow. This is amazing. So we go into details of that because it's so incredible on the way it is produced and imagined for this kind of format. So, but before going into the process, how did it get started? I mean, did you go to Snap and tell them we got a Snap project? Did they come to you and say, could you imagine something like this or that? Or did you adapt something existing? I mean, how did you get started this story?
Yeah, so we've been working in short form content for a number of years. We worked a lot with NBC, especially in Heroes and Heroes Reborn. And Snapchat's had a partnership with NBC. And NBC had brought us into the Snapchat fold. Snapchat had been trying to find something to work with us on and sent us, so they were looking for something climate change oriented. And that's when we called up Zach Crayley, who is the creator and writer, and he had been developing Breakwater as a 1 hour scripted show. And we thought, oh, is there a way that we can kind of maybe do a backdoor pilot type of thing and adapt this and turn it into a Snap show? And we pitched it to them. It's probably the least work we've ever done on a pitch. It was like a paragraph and some pictures, and then they bought it, and we were off to the races. We were supposed to be like done within a year, but then of course COVID hit, and that slowed everything down. And in the end, it was about 2 years from pitch to screen.
So it's been released this year, or?
Yeah, it was released February. Yeah,
Right.
2020.
And I heard that there are huge numbers.
Yeah, Snap just released the number in their quarterly earnings report, which seems like a good thing if they're bragging about it. But yeah, no, they said 10 million daily views. which, for a TV show, that's great. It's been an interesting ride because their metrics mean different things to them than they do to a regular, TV rating system.
Okay, so now let's go into the process. How can we develop something so new for a target that is not an audience target that is not that known for a classical TV series producers? So this is a Snap original. What makes it so special? Did they give you an initial brief or a guidance, like some data to tell you should do it this way and not this one? In the writing process, in the development process, before we skip to production and acting?
They gave us a few up front, but most of it kind of came through the development process. Because again, we come from traditional film and television, so the idea of character development, we're not doing that. There was no time for a lot of that. So that came mostly in the development. They told us in advance, be careful how you start certain scenes. I mean, down to the granular, don't see the back of someone's head for more than a second. Your dips to black have to be a fraction of a second, because the users, the metrics that they have is, they know their viewer, whether they're watching it while lying down in bed, they know if you're watching it on the toilet, they know whether you're watching it this way, for how long. So the detail they had and the minutia was very incredible. It was actually pretty good from a development standpoint. You weren't getting what were just probably arbitrary notes from a suffering writer who's now a creative executive. There was someone actually giving you concrete reasons why they needed certain things to be that way. So the process went relatively quick, but we kind of, as we developed it, they said, let's try something else because X, Y, Z, and I won't get into all those details, but they knew enough right up front to kind of guide us and how, from my mind, it was just, things were so fast. One thing I am proud of is the fact you can watch the show and it doesn't feel as neck break as it did when we were doing it. So.
Jean-Louis, when did you enter this project? You're quite familiar already with this kind of vertical format, very active, very high-speed series. Can you tell us a little bit how did it get started for you?
I was just in the middle of a set when I got the call, and I was just so infused in other work that I wasn't really too interested in adding so much. However, a good friend, Chris here, is a very good friend with the manager, Carl, and we had started talking, and throughout the process, the creative process, what it really entailed, and I really just fell in love with the action, being able to carry scenes with a lot of stillness and also intensity at the same time. It's something that I considered a challenge, and I said, why not? Let's do it.
Well, and we knew we'd live or die because we're in close-up a lot of pieces, so we knew we'd need faces like that one. You knew if you couldn't captivate the audience with someone's face, you would be dead in the water. Yes,
Yeah, it had to work.
And so you had a casting process, and you saw many people, or when did you spot Jean-Louis at the...
So he was first on our list, and we originally said, oh no, we can't get him. We can't afford him. We can't do it. And so we did an open casting call. We had 3,400 submissions, which should be depressing to anybody who's an actor out there. That's tough. And we went with our first choice. We ended up getting our first choice. And I credit Carl for it. I think it was, he said, can you just promise me you're not sending my client down to a shit show? And I said, of course not.
No, it was actually, I enjoyed it. It was probably one of my favorite sets to be a part of. I think the challenge, you were under pressure the entire time in the cold water, true ocean water, and that just made it all the more real, and I like that stuff. It's only temporary.
Yeah, JL come from the East Coast. Most of the cast came from Los Angeles, and came from New Zealand. So,
yeah, speaking about production, it has been quite a project also. So, Megan, there is a story. It's international in terms of production. It's with special effects. But then you got this vertical format, but then you got the COVID crisis. So it has been quite something to build this project. Could you explain us a little bit, how do you got yourself organized? Also, you have a lot of budget constraints. So how did you manage to do what we just saw together a few minutes ago?
yeah, how'd you do that?
It was a lot.
I think when I first read the script, the biggest thing, I think my first question was, are we really sending a wave through the set? And the answer was yes.
Yeah, kinda.
We're gonna send a wave through the set, we're gonna flood the set, and okay. It's a lot to really kind of figure out. Vertically kind of designing is different. Usually we're looking all horizontally, so now we're looking ceilings and floors, and we're seeing much different things than what we're used to. So we kind of had to rethink how to even begin. We had to get really creative with stuff that was already existing at the studio and kind of incorporate all of that into the design to help.
Yeah, tell them where we shot it.
Oh yeah, we shot in Baja, California, or Baja, Mexico, on at Rosarito, in Rosarito, the studios there.
Where they shot Titanic.
They used the tanks there were made for Titanic.
This explains why, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
we had to go where there was tanks.
Where there
So
was
we were
tanks,
looking at
yeah.
South Africa,
Yeah, I was
Eastern
gonna
Europe.
say, there's only like two of those.
More variants came out, and that made, international travel.
And we didn't have the budget to be able to build up. So what Meg came up with was building into the canal that was already existing and building facades.
It
in front of
basically looked like an empty swimming pool, I would say, when we began. And then we had an idea to kind of build, to get rid of the line that made it look like a pool, was to build things that kind of overhung and built up. So we were building up and we were building down. And then we did some other elements going across so that you always had action at kind of 3 levels, right? The lowest level, we had kind of a mid-deck level, and then you could be up on the bridge to really make every frame dynamic. I think that was the biggest challenge, knowing it was with Snap and how quickly you can lose an audience, was making sure that every bit and every moment had something interesting. The background had to be interesting. We had to make sure that the props they were all gonna be right in the forefront in their hands. So we needed to make sure they were realistic and looked good and were engaging and easy for them to use.
Did you use a lot of special effects, or?
Oh yeah, we had special effects in probably every scene. I think every scene had something, whether it was water, fog, haze, fire, pyro. We had a lot of air cannons and things exploding and glass breaking. We started, so that was a whole other element that we had to design. It had to be safe, but we didn't want it to look safe because that doesn't fit the story. So there's a challenge there. And just kind of building in places where all these moments were going to happen that don't look obvious either. So
all of this, and you couldn't warm up the water for Jean-Louis?
Not at all.
we got a hot tub eventually.
Yeah.
we looked into it. It takes 1 week to warm up that much water.
Yeah.
So we just didn't have the time.
They got me a hot tub, that's what matters.
We didn't have the time either because we were changing the water level. For our
Okay.
work in the tank, we started, at the beginning of the story, the water starts
Very low.
here, and then as the storm is coming in, the water is rising. So we ended up, one day we filled it up to the 5-foot mark right before we started shooting. So there was no time to warm that water up.
Yeah.
So for an actor, it's quite a performance as well, because if I understand, Snap told you that, again,
Just
for
leave it
every
on.
panel, it's happening every time. But Snap told you to be, extremely, dynamic. It's a nice speed format, so the actor, must have quite a performance there, not to lose attention, as I said.
It's a balance because they want it big, because their audience wants big, but not too big.
Yeah.
And so you have to throttle it kind of just right. And like I said, casting was so much of it to make that work just
Yeah,
right.
and I also give a lot of credit to Jameson Fry and Stuart Hanlon, who were the directors of the show. A lot of us came from a dramatic stillness background, less is more. But this was the complete opposite. You had to amp up the energy because we were all kind of just going through desperate times, and that's when you're in a vertical frame and you can't really move too much horizontally or anything. It really has to be all about this and the eyes, and how do you communicate that intensity, that desperation, that energy. Sometimes you just really don't know. But when you're on a set, like how Megan designed, it makes it all the more easy because you're just so under pressure. Like Chris said, it's just very fast paced, and that was also something that kept up the momentum of every scene and the motivation as to why we're doing things. And those are things you have to consider because, like Tanner had mentioned this before, the new vertical is the new horizontal. So
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The pan is the new tilt. Is
yeah,
the new
the
pan.
tilt is the new pan or whatever. And I totally agree. So you had to keep that in mind at all times. And at the end of the day, just build from the ground up, figuratively and literally. So.
But you're one of the very, very few that knew that a little bit from before because you had a format like that before.
Yes, I had worked in a Quibi platform. I did a show called Don't Look Deeper, which is it's revamped and it's back to life, and it just did a whole premiere at Cannes Film Festival and it's doing very well. So who knows where these things are going to go? Will they go to a bigger screen? Who knows? Possibly. I guess that's the objective. But I think the vertical format is here to stay, just because it's in addition to streaming and everything else we watch, and the Gen Z population, they love their phones. So I think it's a good way to keep feeding them content.
Correct. So you mentioned that the sets were in Mexico, but there are some other people all over the world working on this show. It's quite international in COVID time. So how has it been, Megan, to get that organized with all these people?
I think 90% of my crew only spoke Spanish. And
Me.
You were a translator.
Yeah.
I was the translator at
So organizing people. I always like to tell people, it's like we had working in a different language, a different measuring system. So the first pass I did on the sets, I didn't think, oh, this should be a metric. So we had to convert everything once we did the first pass. And then even our budgets were, because we were purchasing in pesos as well as dollars, so trying to play that game. And
That was my nightmare.
that was your nightmare.
When
yeah.
to transfer stuff, when to convert things, yeah.
Yeah, and trying to stay on budget and considering all of those factors. Yeah, it was tough. And then even the worlds that we were creating, we incorporated, I think, languages. There was Filipino things. We really tried to incorporate different set pieces. I mean, if you look close, it's probably hard on the phone. But there was a lot of signage, a lot of like different cultural pieces that we put into the sets to really incorporate a global environment.
Yeah, and then when we did looping, we made sure that all the actors that came in were at least bilingual, if not trilingual, that they could do multiple. So if you're listening with headphones, you can hear all the different languages being spoken, so it wasn't just English.
And if we go along the line of the process, what about editing, post-production? Where did it happen? And it is not at this stage where you had this kind of guidance from Snap being extremely, high speed.
Well, yeah, originally we were going to run all our post in Greece and take advantage of some incentives, run our visual effects through there, but it really was looking at how fast, and Snap really, they're very open with the scripting and development, but when it comes to editorial, that's when they need to hit their mark. So we knew with what they were going to require in post, to try to edit overseas would not be a wise idea, so we brought it back to Los Angeles, so we kept it local so the response could be really quick.
We were really spread out though, because our post supervisor was in New York, our assistant editors were all working in Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
Our editorial was in LA, and then ADR was,
All
everywhere.
over.
Janetta was in Spain, you were in New York.
And New Zealand. And
T was in New Zealand.
And it was COVID, so like T couldn't even get into Auckland to record. It took me a better part of a month just finding a studio that we were almost going to send her an iPhone and do this, have her self-tape her ADR, which would have not been great, but we sorted that out. But yeah, many kind of iterations of our process. It constantly kind of changed but I think it worked out for the best, keeping at least editorial locally, because we didn't have a big budget, so we needed everything to go on screen, and wherever we could get a break or an incentive, we wanted to go there. And Greece almost happened, but
I've been very interested by the 333 concept. That could you recap that, Chris? Because it's quite special.
No, the Netflix, the Snap 333. So it's the first 3 seconds, the first 3 minutes, and the first 3 episodes, and that's what you live and die by. So if you don't capture your audience in the first 3 seconds, you'll lose them. If you don't keep them for the first 3 minutes, then they won't finish the episode. And if you don't keep them for the first 3 episodes, then they won't finish the series. But if you get through that first 3 episodes, it's something like 83% retention for the rest of the series. And the thing, that's not that different from how, regular linear television is done, needing to capture your audience quickly. But what's different about Snap is you live and die by tapping and swiping. If you're watching something on Netflix or Disney Plus, whatever, you have to hit pause, you have to hit menu, you have to go back and look for something else. Whereas with Snap, you can just swipe up.
It's a fire hose.
Yeah.
And
then go to something else. It's just that easy to lose your audience. And so that was the pressure that they were really putting on us to keep it engaging and move quickly with the story.
Then there are also common points with this OTT usage I was mentioning before,
Right.
because when we analyze in beta series, the first episode, you lose 10% of the people in the first 5 minutes and only 70% go to the end. So it's important to keep within the first episode. And after a couple of episodes, if the series is good, then you keep them to the end. So similar, but probably more tension.
But think
in
about,
this format.
one of the crazy stats that really convinced us to give this a shot on Snapchat is something like 90% of Generation Z is on Snapchat and viewing originals and content every single day. And that's a huge percentage. And I don't know if there's been a percentage like that, since
Network television.
since the 3 network days. And this is how they're learning to consume content. They're learning to consume content with a tap and swipe mentality. So
It's exciting, isn't it, everyone?
What does that mean, for television in the future?
Yeah.
It is exciting.
After this first season, if I say that, it's because you may have a second season, or it's a franchise theme, it's some kind of a new kind of Hunger Games somehow.
Yeah.
In this world, what's happening right now with the climate change. So, what do you think about what you build there? Is it continuing on Snap in vertical? Could it be bigger out of this space for the Gen Z, for other segments? What are the next steps?
Yeah, in fact, we're selling it as a larger format, traditional, an hour-long series. It was always, we basically shoehorned it into this. So what's in this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the story engine that the series has. Snap is garnering, they're always garnering metrics, and we didn't mention, but there was a whole AR takes a big thematic element in it, and of course Snap is known for their filters. It's you put cat ears on yourself and send it to your friends, and so each episode had its own lens, is what they call it, where you could either put on costumes that the cast wore, put the masks on, you would be submersed in the environment. We did 360 scans of all our sets, so you would be there. So that was an added element, and I don't know kind of which direction, because it's always like, if that's where people are, granted, Chris spoke to the number of people that are there, but are they watching scripted shows? No, they're sending cat pictures to each other. So it's like, how do you convert that audience? And it's using that element that it's known for, making it part of the show, which was organic to it, which always worked. And whether people saw the lenses and said, well, this is an interesting lens, oh, there's a whole show attached to this, or, hey, here's this cool show, now check out the lens and send it to all your friends, is how it went.
The chicken and then,
Yeah, exactly. They were kind of tossing each other back and forth, and those are some of the details, much like OTTs, they don't share you that kind of granular information. Maybe we'll get it at some point. But in terms of what they want to do for additional series, remains to be seen, but my guess is it's going to be more on the reality. It's just such a temporal platform. Spending a year developing something, and the amount of time and everything, I just don't see that as what Snap is. I think natively, there's so much UGC content there. I think it's going to stay more on that level. I don't think the investment on something like this, I could be wrong, is a sustainable model for them.
Yeah, they are trying anyway. Everybody
Correct.
is trying. It's a world of A/B testing
Yes.
everywhere.
Yes.
And maybe your next shot will be on TikTok.
Oh God. We'll see. Never say never. But this was their biggest show they've ever done, the biggest swing they've taken unscripted, and so.
It's a blockbuster for them.
Yes. Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, the Game of Thrones territory for them, and they'd never seen engagement like that. So we'll see.
Jean-Louis, you have a huge community, maybe more on Insta than on Snap, but did you have feedback from your fans about this? Or?
Yeah, I got great feedback. Even from the trailer, people just loved the intensity that they saw right away, and they love action. People love action. People love, fast product, content, movies, blockbuster style stuff. Like, you look at movies like Top Gun or something.
They loved your hair though, right?
They loved my hair. That's exactly what it was. Yeah, and because I consider myself young. I'm 26. I don't know.
You're the audience.
Woo! And I'm a millennial. But I had a lot of friends, say that they kind of conflicted with the ad because then again, this is a free service, and how do you monetize it? Through ad dollars, advertisement dollars. You usually get sponsored somewhere in there throughout an episode, and you'll see a recurring ad. However, Generation Z doesn't like ads. They like cat pictures or straight through, video, and that's about it. Which is why I kind of I agree with these great producers that it should be on a larger format, on a larger scale, because it'll just feel a lot more complete, put together, and it's just immerse yourself in that world. You want to really be there and be present in the tank with us. That ship beautifully designed, and it's that's kind of where it's at.
Well, if you expand to the theater or to HBO Max, then you better change to 4K.
Yeah. It's just he's gonna have to start building left to right now.
But it is worth mentioning that Verizon came in as a major sponsor to do a lot of those filters on their 5G network, and that allowed all those filters on every episode. But it also came with the cost of a Verizon ad, like every minute,
Every 2 minutes. Yeah.
Which comes as an inconvenience for someone, who's a Gen Z and their retention rate is 3 seconds, and then 3 minutes, and then maybe 3 episodes. It's a little rough. So
And the same ad.
and the same ad, yes.
Over and over.
It was the same ad. So to answer your question, got great feedback. People loved the show, but one of the questions was like, how can I watch it without ads? And I'm like, I don't have the
You
answer.
should pay for that. Maybe it's without testing and paying.
I might be able to send you a link. I'll send you a link. Send me $5. Give me $5. I'll send you a link.
Separate business.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, is this somehow showing the future of television? You partly answered that, but all of you, do you think that we will have more new creative concepts like this one? This one is portrait. You have introduced AR. So AR is maybe part of the story, but will AR be part of the next generation formats? Will you even finance that with NFT? We had a discussion yesterday, somehow. So is it really the future of television, or will television remain TV and we will have these separate platforms bringing something alternative? How do you see
I think
the market
that
evolving?
smart creatives and smart showrunners should be thinking about the different ways that they can tell their story. I think that there is a linear format of storytelling that we've all grown up with, that we like, that is not going away, but you need to be able to think outside of that. You need to be able to think of the AR possibilities or the integration possibilities, and just the different ways that also can monetize your content. Whether it be product placement. There's a Xbox. Is it Xbox that we got placement from? And it's just like Sony might give you X amount of dollars. As a producer too, that's where we have to get really scrappy and try to sell little pieces of the show where we can, within your story. And some creators don't like that, and I think that holds them back.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think this isn't TV, obviously, and I don't see it anytime soon becoming one. But it's not going away. I imagine my 6-year-old daughter, what she's going to be. When you have an audience that's native, like you said, we all grew up with traditional television stuff. But when they're natively there, they're going to be watching TVs while talking to their friends in real time. You already have the parties on the watch parties and stuff. I think that's it's becoming more socialized television, and I just leave it down. And the AR element when we're putting on headsets and being fully immersed and all that. And the gamification of content, that's going to become more. That's the thing. So I don't think we should shy away from it. That's why we don't. We kind of dive in and get our feet wet and see what it's like.
It's an incredible pilot, pioneering this new era. And next time maybe we will tell you for people lying or in the toilet, it will be this script, or this one for people eating at the same time.
Yes, yeah, and kind of choose your own adventure almost.
Okay, so I think we're done at exploring, breakwater and engagement, insights, the future of TV. So maybe there are questions here.
Okay. You can keep them going.
Hi, yes, Jean Cirillo. I'm a psychologist and a lawyer. I do expert commentary for shows, so I'm here as a guest. But I had a question. I think it was Tanner who had said that about how you can tell what the audience is, or Snapchat can tell what the audience is doing, how they're listening, if their head is that way, if they're on the bed, if they're on the toilet. How can they tell what position the audience is in at the moment that they're watching it? It's a little scary.
It's a little scary, yeah. No, your phone has...
Beware.
Yeah. Your phone has an
They
accelerometer.
know what you say right now,
Yeah.
That's okay,
They can hear you
I'm
asking.
aware of that, but I mean, on the toilet or on the bed or at night.
Well, what they do is they know that if your phone is held like this, right? Because the accelerometer has the data of where you're holding your phone as you turn it. So when it's held like this, they know that likely you're lying on your back and you're looking at it, so you're probably in bed. And if you're walking around like this and then you sit down, they can sense the movement of the sitting down. And if you sit there for 5 minutes and then you get up, you're probably on the toilet. So, I mean,
They can tell you if you're regular or not, if you're off guard. But they know where you are in the world. They know what time it is.
They know when you're in your
So
that we
if it's
already have
nighttime, they
done.
know, they put it all, it's, the data is
But the position of the
mind-boggling.
phone and what room you're in and everything,
and I don't think they know on a personal level. I don't think they say, Jeannie, is it what? Jean, yeah, I don't think Jean is, in her bed watching this. I think it's more of a conglomeration of segmentation. Yeah, they know
And
that.
I think part of it is too is because Snapchat is a tech company at the end of the day, so a lot of them, a lot of their products and everything they do is just very analytically driven by data, and that's exactly what they'll keep doing, which is why they're very precise about this 333 rule and so forth and so on. But they're using not only just Snapchat technology but Apple technology that correlates with their application to get more data, to know when you're on the toilet or whatever.
We've talked too much about
I should have
Hi, I'm Stefania Carini from Italy. Which kind of data do you have for the show? Which kind of data about the target? Okay. Which kind of data do you have about it? I mean, gender, but also other kind of data, because I think that is, where I am, the position and so on, but for a producer and people that write things, it's important also to see the reaction, but also the data, and how do you combine the two elements to know how make maybe the show bigger, or on the same time these data are something that you can use because it's all important, because if you change the format, if you change the medium, it's something, again, is another adventure. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. We're hoping that we can peel back that onion. I think at this phase, they've kind of kept it fairly limited because they knew we were doing panels like this, so they wanted to wait until we were done. And then they're going to give us greater insights. But you're
We're going to get in trouble for the toilet thing, aren't we?
Yeah, I think so. But to your point,
You don't have data.
No, they haven't released it to us.
like I said, they're waiting until press and all that is over with, and then I think they'll give us more insights. Because as the producers, like we're out, we want to sell the show. We want to know what are the things that really worked. Who is the key demo? We know the age group, but how did that age group split up? So some of that nuance we're not quite privy to.
So I think that it's a big problem for you also, because some years ago you know the value. Now you don't
Yes.
know. Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Yeah, I plan to strong arm some people when I get back.
Okay.
We just need in beta series to wire snap in our,
Yes.
and that's it.
If I'm not mistaken, also, I know that because I've worked with Netflix in the past multiple times, and from what I understood and learned from and said is that they also have a metric system that allows them to see what their viewers actually want. And how you were speaking on behalf of romance earlier, from my understanding, sci-fi is kind of what people are seeking for. So you'll have like movies like Blade Runner 2049 come up to the top #1 movies, you know, in the U.S. or whatever. So they'll be doubling down on that kind of content. I don't know if that helps answer your question. I mean, you won't necessarily know exactly what to change within a scene or whatever it may be, or what works, or if somebody laughed or not. But you can definitely garner some interest by understanding what people actually want to watch nowadays. And to utilize, you know, a big monster like Netflix's metric system, I think, you know, at the end of the day, we're all human. We like similar things. So I don't see why Snapchat wouldn't have something similar.
Well, and as creatives and artists, it's nice to have some data, but it's easy to have paralysis by analysis too.
Yeah.
And you don't want too much so that you start second guessing your story and your characters because, oh, what if they don't like this and that? You know, at some point, you just have to take the information that you have and move forward the best way that you see the story to go.
For sure. You gotta trust yourself.
We have one last question. Oh, yeah.
Hey, I'm Carl Rumbaugh. I'm just a fan of the show. But what I wanted to ask you guys, Megan specifically, because you created such a pressure cooker, you know, because, you know, this show does move so fast and with the 3-second rule and all the things going on, but you really were able to, and I don't know what the budget was, etc., but you really created an environment that really, you know, stood up, you know, against, you know, the normal format. So I just thought that was pretty incredible, the job that you were able to do. So, and it lended itself to the actors who had to kind of, you know, say, hey, we're in this pressure cooker. So you really created an atmosphere that allowed them to really be real and rooted in this desperation and in the kind of the love story and the sacrifice that the characters were going through. So, you know, I was just, it's really just a kudos to you, Megan, on how you were able to do that. Because like that was incredible. Because if that failed, I think this whole thing would have been just like, well, it's kind of cheesy. But it really, really, really worked with how she kind of, you know, created that environment there.
Well, and if you saw her budget, you would.
Yeah, we're not going to show that.
Yeah.
But,
And is Megan single? Is she single or? No, don't want to get me too. I'm okay.
She was great.
One of the, kind of to add to what you said, different than traditional like television, instead of like a 3-walled set, every set we had was 360. They gave them, that was kind of a goal of mine going into the show, was to give them all the freedom to move about everything and see everything and interact with everything, to help really bring the world to life. And I think that was one of the big achievements and successes of the show.
We wouldn't have got it done if we couldn't.
No.
No.
There was no other way to do it.
Totally, and I think some of the best parts of that set were when we were underwater and we were in the tank and you couldn't actually see some of the platforms that you have to stand on. I remember, you know, diving into water and having to keep my eyes closed because I couldn't open them, but still having to be aware of the camera, but not knowing where to stand. And you know, you're swimming in like 6 feet of water, 7 feet of water. You can't really, you're like threading water for most of it. And next thing you know, you're like falling deep in. So the set that she created really put us under pressure, you know, going back to what you said.
You really thought you were going to die.
Yeah, I know, seriously. I was waiting for someone to yell cut, and I was like, guys, why?
That's why it's so immersive.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think it's time for us to wrap up this session. Thank you so much for
Thank
this
you.
amazing
Thank you very much,
format.
everybody.
John, thank you. Thank you so much.
Now you know what to do. You open your Snap account. It's here, it's available for free.
Yeah.
You got some advertising, but try it tonight.
There you go.
So, thank you.